Blue lights swallowed Naomi's mirror as a patrol cruiser boxed her against the curb. Her black sedan rolled to a controlled stop beside a shuttered pharmacy, its tires crunching over loose gravel and broken salt left from winter. She lowered the radio until only the engine's soft hum remained, placed both hands on the steering wheel, and watched two silhouettes separate beneath the flashing lights. Red, blue, red again. The colors slid across her brown skin and the polished wood trim of the dashboard. Officer Caleb Mercer approached the driver's side with one hand resting above his holster. He was broad-shouldered white and old enough to have learned the difference between caution and contempt. His partner, Evan Pike, stayed near the cruiser, younger and visibly uncertain, his boots shifting on the cold pavement. Caleb tapped the window with a metal flashlight. Naomi lowered it halfway. Night air entered the car, carrying exhaust fumes and the bitter smell of old asphalt. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation. Naomi kept her voice level. Why was I stopped? Officer Caleb's flashlight traveled across her face, her charcoal coat, and the leather passenger seat before settling on the courthouse parking permit tucked near the windshield. He did not read it closely. You were drifting. Naomi glanced at the straight lane behind her. The white edge line remained unbroken for nearly 200 feet. Which direction? Caleb's jaw tightened. Are you arguing with me? I'm asking you to state the reason for the stop. She handed him her license and registration, movement slow enough to leave no room for invention. Caleb studied the name Naomi Brooks, then looked at the sedan, as if the vehicle itself required an explanation. This car registered to you. The document is in your hand. Evan moved closer, his body camera showing a steady green light. Naomi noticed its position, the cruiser number reflected in her side mirror, and the security camera mounted above the pharmacy entrance. She also noted the exact time glowing on the dashboard, 1:04:03 p.m. Caleb leaned toward the open window. Cold metal from his badge touched the glass. Step out of the vehicle. Have you confirmed the alleged traffic violation? Step out. Naomi removed her seatbelt. Its buckle clicked sharply in the enclosed car. She opened the door and stood beneath the strobing lights, heels planted on gritty pavement, hands visible at her sides. Caleb moved into her personal space, forcing her back toward the sedan without touching her. People who cooperate don't make simple stops difficult. Naomi looked directly at his nameplate. And officers who follow procedure can explain why a citizen is being detained. Evan's gaze flicked from her to Caleb. For 1 second, the younger officer seemed ready to speak. Caleb cut him off with a raised palm. Pike, keep her here. Then he turned to Naomi. Anything in the vehicle I should know about? Nothing illegal. And I do not consent to a search. The pharmacy sign buzzed overhead, casting a weak green glow across Caleb's face. He smiled without warmth, handed her license to Evan, and walked slowly along the sedan, testing each door handle with a gloved hand. Naomi did not call after him. She watched his reflection move across the dark storefront glass and fixed every step in her memory. At the rear bumper, Caleb stopped and looked back at Evan. Keep her facing the cruiser, he ordered. Then he reached toward the trunk. Caleb opened the driver's door and leaned beneath the steering column, where his thumb found the trunk release. A mechanical pop sounded from the rear of the sedan. Naomi turned toward it, but Evan stepped across her line of sight, the soles of his boots grinding gravel against the pavement. Face the cruiser, ma'am. His voice came out thin beneath the pharmacy sign's electrical buzz. Your partner does not have permission to enter my vehicle, Naomi said. You need to address that with him. Evan held her license between two fingers, bending its corner until the plastic creaked. Behind him, Caleb lifted the trunk lid. Its hinges gave a soft, metallic groan. The cargo light illuminated an emergency kit, a folded wool blanket, and 2 paper grocery bags resting against the gray carpet. Nothing else. Caleb examined the pharmacy windows and spotted his own reflection, staring back through the green neon haze. He shifted behind the raised lid, using it as a shield from the cruiser's dashboard camera. Then his gloved hand disappeared beneath his jacket. Naomi caught the movement anyway, not directly but in the dark storefront glass 20 feet away. A rectangular bundle emerged against Caleb's hip, wrapped in dull brown tape and sealed inside a clear evidence bag. He lowered it into the trunk beside the groceries. The package landed with a muted thud. Evan heard it. His fingers stopped bending Naomi's license. For half a second, the young officer looked over his shoulder. Caleb met his eyes above the trunk lid and gave one slow nod. Evan turned back toward Naomi, widened his stance, and blocked another foot of her view. That choice made him part of it. Naomi drew a measured breath through her nose. Cold air carried the sour odor of exhaust and the faint sweetness of oranges from one of the grocery bags. She did not accuse them. Not yet. Instead, she shifted her weight slightly and studied the glass holding Caleb's reflection in the narrow space beside Evan's shoulder. Caleb moved the package closer to the trunk opening, arranging it where no searching officer could plausibly miss it. He pulled the blanket halfway over one corner, then removed it again, apparently deciding subtlety would only weaken the performance. Next came a small flashlight. Its beam swept across the carpet, the groceries, and finally the bundle he had brought with him. Well, Caleb called out, his tone suddenly louder and more official. "What do we have here?" Naomi turned despite Evan's position. He lifted an arm to stop her without making contact. The sleeve of his uniform brushed her coat, rough nylon, against smooth wool. "Stay where you are. Move your arm, Officer Pike." She spoke quietly, but Evan lowered it. Caleb removed the package with both hands and carried it toward the cruiser as though its weight confirmed something. Under the pulsing emergency lights, the brown tape flashed red, then blue, while the clear bag crackled between his gloves. "You said there was nothing illegal in the vehicle." Naomi looked first at the package, then at the front of Caleb's jacket, where a rectangular crease remained in the fabric. There wasn't. Caleb placed the bundle on the cruiser's hood. Warm metal ticked beneath it, and the idling engine sent a faint vibration through the tape brick. "That answer isn't going to help you now. Your search was unlawful, and that package is not mine. That's what everyone says." Caleb glanced at Evan. "You saw where I found it." Evan's mouth opened, but only the hiss of the cruiser radio filled the pause. Caleb's stare hardened. "You saw it, Pike." Evan swallowed and gave a single nod. Naomi watched the exchange without blinking. Then she looked past them toward the pharmacy camera, its small red indicator glowing above the entrance. Caleb followed her gaze, stepped between her and the storefront, and pointed toward the rear of the cruiser. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Naomi remained still. "Before you touch me," she said, "make sure both cameras keep recording." Caleb pulled the handcuffs from his belt, and their steel teeth clicked open beneath the flashing lights. "Body camera stays on," Naomi said, turning without resistance. "So does his." She nodded toward Evan's green recording light. Caleb caught her wrists and closed the cuffs, one notch tighter than necessary. Cold metal pressed into her skin. The cruiser's exhaust drifted around them, sharp and oily in the night air. "You don't give orders here," he said. "Then record that I requested preservation of both body camera files, the dashboard footage, and the pharmacy surveillance video at 10:51 p.m. Evan looked down at the timestamp on his camera. Caleb seized the package from the hood and shoved it into an evidence sack. Paper rasped against brown tape. Suspect became argumentative during a lawful search, he dictated. Naomi turned her head just enough to see him. "I did not consent to the search. Put her in the car, Pike." Evan opened the rear door. Naomi ducked beneath the frame and sat on hard, molded plastic that smelled of disinfectant and stale sweat. When the door slammed, the pharmacy camera vanished behind tinted glass, but its red indicator remained fixed in her memory. 23 minutes later, fluorescent tubes hummed above the booking room at the precinct. A ventilation grate pushed dry, overheated air across Naomi's face, while a printer spat out forms behind a scratched plexiglass partition. Her cuffs were removed, leaving pale bands around her wrists. Caleb placed the evidence sack on a stainless steel counter with a theatrical thump. "Possession with intent," he told the booking officer. "Found in plain view inside the trunk." Naomi faced the officer. "Enter my preservation request into the intake record." Caleb slid between them. "She's trying to run the room again." Dashboard footage, both officers' body cameras, dispatch audio vehicle location data, and the exterior camera at Bell Street Pharmacy, Naomi continued. The booking officer hesitated, then typed. Each keystroke sounded crisp in the tiled room. Caleb's smile disappeared. He took Evan through a gray door into the report bay, where old coffee and warm toner thickened the air. Naomi could see them through a narrow, reinforced window. Caleb dropped a pre-written incident report onto the desk and tapped the signature line. "You observed the package in the trunk after I established probable cause." Evan read the page. The paper trembled faintly against the metal desktop. She denied consent. Consent wasn't required. Caleb pushed a black pen into Evan's hand. "You also saw her reach toward the center console." "She never did that." Caleb leaned closer, blocking the ceiling light. "Then maybe you were distracted. Maybe your field evaluation needs another 6 months." "Sign it." Evan glanced through the window. Naomi stood at the booking counter watching him without pleading, without looking away. Caleb tapped the page again. Once, twice. Evan lowered the pen and wrote his name. Caleb signed beneath it, then carried the report into the booking room and laid it beside the evidence form. Naomi read the opening lines: upside down, erratic driving, furtive movement, probable cause contraband in plain view. A complete story built from events that had never happened. I want my request time-stamped and a copy provided to counsel, she said. Caleb planted both palms on the counter. You're facing a felony. Stop pretending procedure can save you. The fluorescent light reflected in Naomi's eyes as she leaned toward the microphone embedded in the plexiglass. Her voice remained low enough that the room had to quiet around it. Are you sure this is the story you want to tell in front of a judge? Caleb lifted the signed report between them. It's the only story the judge will hear. Naomi looked at Evan's signature, then at Caleb. Then file it exactly as written. The report entered the system at 12:18 a.m., and Evan watched its first lie collide with the clock. In the records bay, blue monitor light washed over his face while an aging desktop fan rattled against a stack of citation forms. He opened the cruiser's automatic vehicle location log to complete the arrest packet. The incident report claimed Caleb had observed Naomi's sedan drifting across the center line at 10:39 p.m. But the patrol car's GPS placed them 4 blocks away at that minute, stationary behind a closed gas station. Evan scrolled down. The cruiser had not reached Bell Street until 10:42. Naomi's dashboard had shown 10:43 when Caleb approached her window. 3 minutes, small enough to dismiss in conversation, large enough to destroy probable cause under oath. Evan printed the location log. Warm paper slid into his palm, carrying the dry smell of toner. He laid it beside the signed report and traced both timestamps with his finger. The stop could not have happened the way Caleb had written it. Neither could the search. Behind him, a chair leg scraped across tile. Caleb stood in the doorway holding 2 paper cups of coffee steam curling beneath the fluorescent lights. His gaze dropped to the documents. What are you doing, Evan? Covered the GPS sheet with the incident report, finishing the packet. Caleb set 1 cup down without offering it. Bitter coffee splashed over the rim and darkened the desk. He pulled the top page aside, exposing the location log. For several seconds, only the fan and the distant clang of a holding cell door disturbed the room. System clocks drift, Caleb said. GPS doesn't drift 4 blocks. Evan's voice barely crossed the desk. Caleb took the printout, folded it twice, and fed it into the locked shredding slot. The machine caught the paper with a grinding whine and reduced the timeline to narrow white strips. You signed what you witnessed. I signed what you put in front of me. Caleb stepped close enough for Evan to smell coffee and wintergreen gum on his breath. Your probationary review is next month. 1 note from me and you're directing traffic until this badge rusts off your chest. Correct the supplemental log or explain to Internal Affairs why you failed to observe a felony arrest. Across the precinct, Naomi sat in a narrow attorney call booth beneath a yellow ceiling panel. The metal stool chilled through her coat, and the receiver smelled faintly of disinfectant. A digital notice on the wall warned that ordinary calls were recorded. Attorney calls were not. When Dana Cole answered, Naomi gave her no history and no speculation, only names, times, camera locations, and the exact evidence that required immediate preservation. Bell Street Pharmacy, Naomi said. Exterior camera facing the curb. Their system overwrites every 8 hours. Send a litigation hold notice, contact the manager, and obtain an emergency preservation order from the on-call magistrate. What about the department footage? Dana asked. Name both officers, the cruiser number, and every recording source in the motion. Do not disclose my position. Treat me as any other client. Naomi heard keys moving quickly on the other end, then the sharp rip of paper from a printer. The pharmacy manager can export the file, but he needs written authority. Get it before 6. 40 minutes later, a fax machine near booking chirped and released a court-stamped preservation order. Dana had served the pharmacy and the police department electronically. The manager had already isolated the video from automatic deletion. Naomi pressed the receiver tighter. Keep the original metadata intact. No edits, no copy sent here. In the records bay, Caleb placed a blank supplemental form before Evan and clicked a pen open. The point hovered over the signature line. Choose, Caleb said. Fix the time before sunrise or lose your career before lunch. At 7:06 a.m., Caleb carried the arrest packet into the prosecutor's intake office and demanded a felony filing before Naomi could leave custody. The room smelled of scorched coffee and damp wool in gray daylight, pressed through wired glass windows above rows of humming computers. Assistant District Attorney Laura Chen read the report once, then again dragging one finger beneath the line that claimed contraband had been visible inside a closed trunk. What established probable cause to open the vehicle, she asked. Caleb planted the evidence sack on her desk. Its paper sides crackled around the tape bundle, erratic driving, and a furtive movement toward the console. Your body camera summary begins after she was already outside. Equipment delay. Laura turned to Evan. Did you observe the traffic violation? Caleb answered first. My partner confirmed it in writing. Evan stared at the brass edge of Laura's desk. His jaw moved once before he said, The report contains my signature. Laura closed the file. That wasn't my question. A records supervisor entered carrying Naomi's sealed identification envelope, which had been requested after the booking system flagged her restricted government credential. Laura broke the seal, read the verification page, and immediately lowered it from Caleb's sight. The radiator hissed beneath the window. Her chair rolled back an inch. Officer Mercer, wait outside. This is my arrest. Outside. Caleb remained still until Laura reached for the phone. Then he snatched up his coffee and left the door slamming hard enough to shake the blinds. Laura crossed the corridor to the holding area, where Naomi sat beneath a fluorescent panel with her coat folded across her knees. The air tasted metallic, and a floor buffer whined somewhere beyond the cinder block wall. Laura stopped before the bars. Your judicial credential has been authenticated, Judge Brooks. Naomi rose, smoothing one hand over the creased wool. My position does not decide whether that search was lawful. No, ma'am. The absence of probable cause does. Laura unlocked the door and handed her a release form. The office is declining charges pending review. Your property will be returned, except the disputed package. Naomi signed once. No flourish. Preserve that package, it seals, in every custody entry. Caleb stood at the far end of the corridor when Naomi emerged, carrying her purse and courthouse permit. His coffee cup had collapsed slightly beneath his grip. Laura stepped between them before he could speak. She is released. Do not amend your report without routing every version through my office. Naomi met Caleb's eyes, then walked past him. She gave him neither her title nor the reaction he appeared to be waiting for. An hour later, she entered the county courthouse through the judge's secure entrance. Polished stone chilled the sound of her heels, while brass fixtures reflected warm pools of light along the corridor. In chambers, her clerk had placed the morning arraignment calendar beside a stack of affidavits. Naomi removed her coat, opened the first file, and stopped at the evidence photograph clipped to the page. A taped rectangular bundle rested on a patrol car hood. Same brown tape, same clear evidence bag. The arresting officers were Caleb Mercer and Evan Pike. The defendant, 19-year-old Marcus Reed, faced a mandatory prison term if the cargo allegation survived. Naomi turned to the probable cause statement. Erratic movement, furtive reach, contraband in plain view. The sentences matched Caleb's report almost word for word. She pressed the intercom. Asked the chief judge to reassign my morning calendar after the initial appearance and notified defense counsel that all patrol recordings in State v. Reed must be preserved immediately. Her clerk paused. Should I state a reason? Naomi closed the file, keeping one hand over Marcus Reed's name. Tell them I have identified a conflict that must go on the record. At 8:14 a.m., Evan slipped into the precinct's digital evidence room and locked the door behind him. Server fans filled the windowless space with a steady metallic whir, while cold air from an overhead vent raised gooseflesh along his wrists. He inserted an encrypted department drive into the docking terminal and entered his credentials. The screen displayed both body camera files from Naomi's arrest, the cruiser video, and an audit warning stating that every download would be logged. Evan clicked export anyway. A blue progress bar crawled across the monitor. 20%. 46. On his own recording, Caleb's voice ordered him to keep Naomi facing the cruiser. On Caleb's file, the image jolted as he moved behind the trunk lid. For 3 seconds, the bottom corner of a brown tape package appeared beneath his jacket before the camera faced the pavement. Evan copied the GPS history next. 89%. The terminal chimed and the drive's indicator turned green. He removed it, sealed it inside a plain evidence envelope, and wrote Naomi's case number across the flap. Outside, a key entered the lock. Caleb stepped in carrying a tablet, bringing with him the smell of cold tobacco and rain-damp uniform fabric. His eyes went from the terminal to the envelope in Evan's hand. The system flagged an export. Evan held the envelope against his chest. The footage is under a preservation order. Caleb shut the door. Give it to me. No. The word landed beneath the server noise. Caleb reached for the envelope, but Evan moved around the terminal and pushed it through the secure intake slot in the wall. It dropped into the evidence office on the other side with a hollow metal bang. Caleb stared at the empty slot, then opened the administrator panel on his tablet. You just attached your name to hers. He selected the files and pressed delete. A red banner appeared, legal hold active. Caleb tried again. Access denied. He left the room without another word, moving fast enough that the door struck the rubber stop. From the records supervisor's workstation, he submitted an emergency request claiming the footage was corrupted and should be quarantined from disclosure. Then he called the evidence office and ordered the envelope withheld. Across town, sunlight cut through the blinds in Naomi's chambers and striped the polished conference table. A sealed court laptop hummed beside Marcus Reed's file, and fresh coffee cooled untouched near her hand. Dana Cole, joined by secure video, and displayed Evan's export receipt, which had been automatically sent to counsel when the legal hold registered his transfer. Mercer filed a quarantine request 4 minutes later, Dana said. If the department approves it, we could lose access while they conduct an internal review. Naomi opened the emergency preservation docket. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, each keystroke sharp in the quiet room. She attached the pharmacy video, the original metadata, the GPS discrepancy, the export receipt, and the audit notice showing Caleb's deletion attempts. Then she directed the package into the court's immutable evidence vault, where no police administrator could alter or remove it without a judicial order and a recorded hearing. The upload reached 100%. A digital seal appeared beside the files. Naomi removed her courthouse credential from a locked drawer and placed it next to a blank affidavit. Until that moment, her identity had remained outside the public allegations. Entering it would connect her arrest to Marcus Reed's case and force her recusal, surrendering control over what happened next. She signed anyway. Dana read the first line on her screen. I, Naomi Brooks, sitting judge of the County Superior Court, declare under penalty of perjury. At the precinct, Caleb's tablet sounded once. His quarantine request had been denied because the evidence was now under court seal. Naomi pressed SUBMIT, watched the filing number appear, and closed the laptop. No more anonymous preservation, she said. Put me on the record. At 9:32 the next morning, a process server crossed the precinct lobby and placed 2 subpoenas on the duty captain's desk. The heavy cream paper rasped beneath his palm, and the brass seal caught the hard, fluorescent light as he called Caleb and Evan forward. Both men were ordered to appear that afternoon in State versus Marcus Reed, produce their original reports, and testify about the stop that had placed a taped package in a 19-year-old's car. Caleb read the courtroom number, folded his subpoena into quarters, and slipped it behind his badge. Routine suppression hearing, he said. Evan kept his copy open. The paper shook softly above the counter. A second line required preservation of all recordings connected to their testimony, including materials under court seal. Caleb pressed 2 fingers over that sentence. The woman from Bell Street got her lawyer to make noise. Her charges were rejected, so now she thinks she can contaminate another case. He still called Naomi the woman from Bell Street. He had not seen the sealed affidavit, and the public docket identified her only as a protected witness, with a conflict disclosure awaiting review. Across town, Naomi stood in the judge's robing room as afternoon sunlight burned pale rectangles across the oak lockers. The air smelled of pressed wool and lemon polish. On the bench lay her black robe, Marcus Reed's case file, and the formal recusal notice she had signed. Chief Judge Raymond Ellis entered, closed the padded door, and set a reassignment order beside them. Once you disclose the conflict, I take the case, he said. You will make no findings about Mercer or Pike. Naomi ran her thumb along the robe's coarse sleeve. I understand. You can submit the notice through the clerk. You do not have to face them. Naomi picked up the robe and slid one arm into it, then the other. They wrote that I was reaching for a console. They wrote the same thing about Marcus Reed. The conflict belongs on the record in the room where those words were meant to become truth. She fastened the robe at her collar and handed Ellis the sealed affidavit. That choice surrendered her authority over the hearing, but it ensured Caleb and Evan would have to see exactly whose judgment they had tried to manipulate by 1:55 p.m. The courthouse corridor carried the squeak of rubber soles, the low murmur of attorneys, and the mineral chill of old stone. Caleb entered through the public security checkpoint in full uniform, his polished belt creaking with every step. Evan followed with the evidence binder held against his ribs. Inside the empty witness room, Caleb shut the door and twisted the lock. A radiator clicked beneath a narrow window, heating the stale odor of dust and copier ink. Look at me. Caleb said. Evan raised his eyes. Our reports match. The package was visible. Reed reached toward the console. Brooks did the same thing. No speeches, no corrections. Evan set the binder on the table. The footage is sealed. Sealed is not played. A judge rules on testimony, and ours is identical. Caleb straightened Evan's collar as though preparing him for inspection. If you change one word, you admit you lied under oath before you even take it. You lose the badge, the pension, everything. Stay with me, and nobody touches us. A courtroom deputy opened the door and called both officers into courtroom 4. They entered beneath warm ceiling lights and past rows of varnished benches that smelled faintly of wax. Caleb took the front seat, relaxed his shoulders, and gave Evan one final nod. Behind the closed door above the bench, fabric moved against wood. The deputy faced the room. All rise. Caleb leaned close enough for only Evan to hear. When that door opens, tell my story or stand alone. The door opened, and Naomi Brooks stepped onto the bench in a black judicial robe. Caleb's shoulders locked. The leather of his duty belt gave one small creak as his hand stopped halfway to the table. Beside him, Evan rose with the rest of the courtroom, but Caleb remained bent between sitting and standing, his face drained beneath the warm ceiling lights. The woman he had handcuffed beside a shuttered pharmacy now stood above the state seal, one hand resting near the wooden gavel. Naomi took her seat. The polished bench framed her like a dark wall, and the faint rustle of her robe carried through the silence. Please be seated. Caleb lowered himself mechanically. His folded subpoena slipped from behind his badge and landed near his boot. He did not reach for it. Naomi opened the file before her. This matter is State of Franklin versus Marcus Reed, case number 24CR1187. Her voice was the same measured voice Caleb had dismissed on Bell Street, only now every word entered the official record. Before any testimony is taken, the court must disclose a conflict affecting these proceedings. Caleb turned toward the prosecutor. She kept her eyes on Naomi. At the defense table, Marcus Reed sat beside counsel, his cuff chain resting motionless against the wood. The ventilation system breathed cool air through the room, carrying the dry scent of paper and furniture wax. Naomi looked directly at the two officers. Officer Mercer, Officer Pike. Step forward. Their chairs scraped the floor in uneven succession. Caleb approached first, but the swagger was gone from his stride. Evan followed with the evidence binder pressed against his uniform. When they reached the lectern, Naomi removed her glasses. Pale bands from the handcuffs were still visible beneath the sleeves of her robe. Caleb saw them. His gaze dropped to the microphone. At 10:43 p.m. 2 nights ago, Naomi said these officers detained me on Bell Street. They searched my vehicle, attributed a taped package to me, and submitted a report alleging conduct that I dispute under oath. A whisper moved through the gallery, then died when Naomi raised one hand. Caleb gripped the lectern until the tendons stood out across his knuckles. Your Honor, he began, his mouth catching on the title. I wasn't informed that I was a judge, Naomi asked. The question landed without volume. Would that have changed how you conducted the stop? Caleb's lips parted. No answer came. The wall clock clicked once, twice. Evan unfastened the binder and placed it on the lectern. Judge Brooks, he said, my signed report is not accurate. Caleb snapped his head toward him. Pike. Evan moved one step away from Caleb. I will testify under oath. Naomi did not reward him with relief, nor punish him with contempt. She turned to the clerk. Enter Officer Pike's statement and preserve the binder without alteration. Then she lifted the signed recusal order. Because I am a witness and potential victim, I will make no ruling on the credibility, liberty, or criminal exposure of anyone in this room. Effective immediately, I recuse myself. Chief Judge Raymond Ellis will assume this case. She signed the order on the bench, surrendering the very authority Caleb now feared she might use against him. The sealed recordings, location data, custody records, and affidavits are referred to an independent special prosecutor in internal affairs. Marcus Reed's detention will receive immediate review by Judge Ellis. A side door opened. Chief Judge Ellis entered as two internal affairs investigators took positions near the courtroom rail. Naomi rose, removed the robe, and folded it across the bench. Without it, she was again the woman from Bell Street, but Caleb no longer controlled the story. She stepped down until they stood at the same level. Officer Mercer, she said you wanted a judge to hear your report. The investigators approached from behind him. Naomi held his stare. Now tell it under oath. Chief Judge Ellis took the bench, and the courtroom shifted from revelation to evidence. Naomi sat at counsel's table as a sworn witness, no robe, no gavel, no power over the ruling. Cold air moved through the brass vents, carrying the dry scent of paper and floor wax. Caleb stood at the lectern beneath a white ceiling light, while Evan remained 3 feet away with his hands open at his sides. The clerk raised the oath card. "Officer Pike, do you swear to tell the truth?" Evan looked at Caleb, then at Naomi. "I do." His voice caught against the wood-paneled walls. Officer Mercer placed the package in Judge Brooks's trunk. "I saw him do it. Then I signed a report I knew was false." Caleb struck the lectern with his palm. "He's saving himself." Judge Ellis's gavel cracked once. "You will remain silent." The special prosecutor connected a sealed drive to the courtroom monitor. The pharmacy recording appeared first grainy but clear. Caleb opening Naomi's trunk, shielding himself with the lid, and removing a brown tape bundle from inside his jacket. The plastic evidence bag crackled through Evan's body camera microphone at the exact moment Caleb lowered it beside the groceries. Next came the cruiser's location record. It proved the alleged traffic violation had been written 3 minutes before the officers reached Bell Street. Then the audit log filled the screen, showing Caleb's 2 deletion attempts after the preservation order took effect. Each entry carried his credentials and timestamp. Caleb's fingers released the lectern. His arms fell beside him. The same man who had commanded the roadside now waited for permission to speak. "That footage lacks context," he said. Naomi rose when called and walked to the witness stand. The leather chair felt cool beneath her hand, and the microphone emitted a low electrical hum. She described the stop, the unlawful search, the package, and the words Caleb had entered into his report. She neither raised her voice nor asked for punishment. When the prosecutor finished, Judge Ellis turned to her. "Do you seek to address Officer Mercer directly?" Naomi looked at the folded robe resting above the bench. "No, Your Honor. I seek the same process he tried to deny me." Evan then surrendered his badge and service weapon to Internal Affairs. Caleb refused until the duty captain stepped forward and repeated the order. Metal clicked against wood as his badge landed on the evidence table. By sunset, both officers were suspended. Marcus Reed walked out of custody after Judge Ellis found the search unsupported, and the prosecution dismissed the cargo charge. Weeks later, the independent inquiry matched the tape bundles, falsified language, and custody irregularities to 4 additional arrests. Those cases were vacated and sent for review. Evan pleaded guilty to filing a false report, lost his badge, and accepted probation in exchange for truthful testimony. His cooperation did not erase his choice on Bell Street. It became the first honest consequence he chose to face. Caleb was indicted for evidence tampering, perjury, official misconduct, and civil rights violations. At trial, the pharmacy video played once more. This time, he could not order anyone to look away. The jury convicted him, and the department formally terminated him before sentencing. On the morning the final wrongful case was dismissed, Naomi returned to courtroom 4. Sunlight warmed the state seal, the gallery benches smelled of fresh polish, and a clerk placed a clean docket beneath her hand. She put on her robe and climbed the steps to the bench, not to punish the men who had targeted her, but to continue the work their lies had tried to corrupt. Caleb had planted illegal cargo because he believed his badge could manufacture truth. Naomi answered by giving up personal control, placing every fact on the record, and letting impartial justice speak. He tried to put evidence in her trunk, but she put the truth where his lies could never reach it.